to create generations after marrying Anasuya, Āditya and Sharanam tvam papadeham. Ya eva jagadishvaraha. Rajamatma samam mayam. Rajamatma samam mayam. Prayachati chintayan. Prayachati chintayan. Sharanam tvam papadeham. Sharanam papadeham. Ya eva jagadishvaraha. Rajam atma samam mayam. Prayachatya iti chintayan.
Sharanam tam prapadyeham.
Sharanam tam papadeham. Ya eva jagadishvaraha.
Rajamatma samam mayam.
Rajamatma samam mayam.
Prayachat iti chintayan.
Prayachatati chintayan.
Sharanam tam prapadyeham.
Sharanam papadeham.
Ya eva jagadishvara. Rajam atma samam mayam.
Rajamatma samam mayam.
Prayachatiti chintayan.
Prayachatati chintayan.
Sharanam tam prapadyeham.
Sharanam tam papadeham.
Ya eva jagadishvara.
Ya eva jagadishvaraha.
Rajam atma samam mayam.
Rajamatma samam mayam.
Prayachatiti chintayan.
Prayachatati chintayan.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. He was thinking, may the Lord of the universe, of whom I have taken shelter, kindly be pleased to offer me a son exactly like him. Purport. It appears the great sage Atri Muni had no specific idea of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, he must have been conversant with the Vedic information that there is a Supreme Personality of Godhead who is the creator of the universe, from whom everything emanated, who maintains this creative manifestation, and in whom the entire manifestation is conserved after dissolution. Yatova imani bhutani, Tattva Upanishad 3.1.1. The Vedic mantras give us information of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Atri Muni concentrated his mind upon that Supreme Personality of Godhead, even without knowing his name, just to make from him a child exactly on his level. This kind of devotional service, in knowledge of God's name, when knowledge of God's name is lacking, is also described in the Bhāgavatam, where the Lord says that 4 kinds of men with backgrounds of pious activities come to him asking for what they need. Atri Muni wanted a son just like the Lord, and therefore he is not supposed to have been a pure devotee. He is not supposed to have been a pure devotee, because he had his desire to be fulfilled, and that desire was material. Although he wanted a son exactly like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this desire was material, because he did not want the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, but only a child exactly like him. If he had desired the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his child, he would have been completely free of material desires, because he would have wanted the Supreme Absolute Truth. But because he wanted a similar child, his desire was material. Thus, Atri Muni cannot be counted among the pure devotees. there would be heirs to the kingdom, and King Shantanu's worries would be over. So, from Ambika, Anu was born, and from Ambika, Dhritarashtra was born, and Vidura was born from their servant lady. So in total, Vyasa has fathered 3 sons in this way. Later, in the next chapter of the Āditya, the Mahabharata, it describes that Vidura grew up just like normally children do with his 2 other brothers. They grew up nicely together, they associated with each other, and he too also learned the mastery of weapons and warfare. It wasn't until later on that things started to turn slightly differently. So, Vidura asked a question in the previous verse 16 to Maitreya Rishi. So, a recap of Maitreya Rishi. Maitreya Rishi, too, he was also a great person. He had been among the sages in whom grandfather Vishnu had imparted spiritual knowledge whilst he was lying there on a bed of arrows at the end of the Mahabharata. In the previous canto, the 3rd canto, Shukadeva Goswami describes how Vidura asked a number of questions to Maitreya Rishi. And there was an interesting series of events which led to Vidura meeting Maitreya Rishi and asking many questions, which are recorded here in the Śrimad. So, as Vidura's father was a sage, but his mother was a servant woman, he didn't inherit any land or any house. So he was actually living in the palace of his brother Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra, he was the regent and the royal caretaker and administrator, whereas the kingdom itself belonged to King Pandu, and the heirs of this kingdom, the rightful heirs of this kingdom, were of course the 5 Pandava brothers. Vidura was the trusted and loyal advisor. However, of course, as we know with the history, when the Pandava brothers grew up, Dhritarashtra changed his mind, and he didn't want to give the kingdom to them anymore. Of course, this led Vidura to object to this, and this resulted in him being ejected from the palace and forced him to become a wandering mendicant, wandering to the holy tirthas of the land, such as Āditya, Mathura, and Dwarka. Along his travels, he actually met Uddhava, and when he met Uddhava, he asked many questions, and he learned of the lives of the Kuru dynasty. This, of course, led to even more questions, but Uddhava actually, he was on his way to the Himalayas, which I'll talk about more later, this place called the Himalayas. But Vidura had still many, many questions to ask. So, just down on the foothills of the Himalayas, Uddhava instructed him to go and speak to Maitreya Rishi, who was just there on the banks of the Ganga in Haridwar. Maitreya had personally been instructed by Krishna and had great bhakti as well as knowledge. So for many verses, Vidura asked questions, to which the learned Maitreya answered all of these over 28 chapters, detailing the pastimes of Lord Nrsimhadev and Lord Kapila. So today we are going to discuss the great qualification and sacrifices that Atrimuni and his wife Anasuya undertook to become the parents of the Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. It is described in a series of verses, 17 to 20, how Anasuya qualified to have the intimate and divine loving service of Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma as her children. That she did severe austerities, practicing daily yoga and meditation, whilst eating very frugally for many, many years. So who is Anasuya? Anasuya, as you can remember, we just recently son of Lord Brahma, Kardama. She is the brother of Devī, who is also her teacher. So Anasuya has many different pastimes, of which I'm just going to tell a few, which are as follows. Okay. This is wonderful because I'm only actually just starting to talk about Atri and Anasuya. For anyone that missed out on anything I was speaking earlier, I was just giving an update as to whereabouts we are in the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, just recapping on the different personalities speaking. So I'm just going to tell a few things about Anasuya. Anasuya, as I just mentioned, she's one of the daughters of Devī and Prajapati Kardama. She is the brother of Kapila, who taught her. So Anasuya actually became known as the Tapas Shakti. And she did this by saving the world from drought and famine. So I'm going to come back to that story and tell it in more detail. So Atri Muni, her very qualified husband, as we remember, all of the daughters of Devī and Kardama were all given to different, very highly qualified sages, because this was the beginning of the propagation of mankind. So they all had a mission. So Atri Muni, who was also the son of Lord Brahma, and he was also one of the Saptarishis and Prajapatis. Once, while Atri Muni was performing penance in the Kannada forest, there was a terrible drought in the area. At that time, his wife, Anasuya, she began to make, in the sand, she began to make a Shiva Lingam, and she began to offer worship to that Lingam. After some time, whilst he was practicing his penances, Anasuya's husband, Atri, asked her to give him a little water. However, of course, there was a complete drought in the area. In fact, the river had dried up and there was famine all around. The trees were no longer producing food and the birds and animals had nothing to eat. So there was no water to be found anywhere. Then suddenly, as Anasuya Devi was praising this lingam she had made, the Shiva lingam she had made out of sand, suddenly there appeared in front of her Ganga Devi. Ganga Devi then said to her, "There will be a hole here," pointing to the area in front of her. "Water will come out of it in a torrent." Then, sure enough, pure water began to flow from that place, pointed out by Mother Ganga. Anasuya then begged and begged Ganga Devi, "Please, can you stay here just for 1 month more?" But Ganga Devi, she thought about it and she said, "Yes, okay, I agree, I will stay here for 1 month more, but only on the condition that you give me 1 month of the results of your tapashakti." So Anasuya agreed. Then Anasuya was able to give a lovely vessel of water for her husband to drink. Her husband, Atri Muni, became very pleased. "Where did you get this wonderful, fresh and pure water from, my dear wife?" So of course, Anasuya then explained, "Well, actually, the goddess Ganga Devi, I was worshipping this Shiva Lingam that I had made from the sand, and now the goddess Ganga Devi has come down and given me darshan, and she has agreed to stay here for 1 month if I give her the results of my tapas shakti." So Atri Muni was very pleased, and he asked to see Ganga Devi himself. Anasuya then started to pray again to Ganga Devi, "Please, my husband is so pleased at this, and the world really benefits from your association being here. Please, can you stay here forever and always in this world to do these kind of austerities?" But the point being is that throughout the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, we see that
the different personalities who are able to give birth to amazing personalities, or even of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. For them, how did they become qualified to do this? It's a very interesting thing because, of course, Krishna has already pre-selected them. He already knows them, and it's already preordained that these people, it's written in Shastra who are going to be the parents of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For example, we know that exactly who the parents of the next incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is going to be. It's written very clearly who they will be. So if anyone comes and declares themselves to be this personality, we can see actually, no, this isn't the case, by asking who their parents were and where they were born and under what circumstances. So we see that they actually, for example, with Mother Devaki, she was able to become the Supreme Personality of Godhead's mother for many lifetimes, not just in one lifetime, but it also took many lifetimes to build up this qualification. So it brings the whole theme of there is the mercy, but there is also the endeavor of the devotee. So even though it's the Lord's mercy and it was already preordained that she's going to be the mother of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, she still had to endeavor, she still had to qualify herself to be that personality. So as we see a lifetime before, Mother Devaki, she was actually Prishni, and in that lifetime her husband and herself, they were not going to have children. Instead, they just practiced for many, many thousands of years severe austerities. So in order, the next life, they were able to have the Supreme Personality of Godhead as their son. So we can see that not only do these austerities that we could do with one another, with our spouse. So what do I mean by austerities that we can do as practitioners, as devotees today? So we serve together, and we have to understand, or we try to aspire to understand, that the vow of marriage is a lifetime commitment for one another. As I was just saying and mentioning about these divine personalities, they understood that this commitment was many, many lifetimes that they were going to be together. And throughout that time, they would practice austerities together. Now, the austerities of modern day life, of modern day, the ashram, grihastha ashram. So we build an ashram together and we support one another. For over 50% of everybody here, the grihastha ashram is going to be what's going to happen. It's the most suitable ashram for most spiritual aspirants, and because it creates a safety net and it creates a support system. Because basically you're going to spend at least one lifetime, if not many lifetimes, with this same person. So this person, it's ordained, maybe you could say it's your destiny to marry a certain person. Maybe you knew them in the previous life. I'm not sure, I'm not an astrologer, but it's possible, it's quite possible. So it's good to understand that your relationship is one of spiritual companionship. Now us, as the aspiring devotees of Krishna, we have an advantage because we try to do everything with the intention of bhakti, the intention of pleasing Krishna, the intention of pleasing our spiritual master, the intention of spreading Krishna consciousness. So we're already coming together with intention, just like these great personalities are doing. Which is a little contrary to how ordinarily people come together and decide to be together, decide to, or not decide, but have children together. It's more a matter of circumstance, whereas devotees can very much meditate, think about, and also qualify themselves to meet the most desirable partner, somebody who is also a devotee, somebody who can support them, and somebody who can actually make them flourish more in their spiritual life and give more to the world, just like these personalities do by giving birth to great personalities or great kings to further on the good progeny of humankind. So that is one of the missions that we have here as devotees of Krishna and as members of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. One of the things that we strive to do is to raise children in Krishna consciousness. So how do we do that? So we serve together as man and woman in Grihastha ashram. And the austerity is actually doing that in the traditional sense. The austerity for the man in the traditional sense is to go out into the world and work for at least a minimum of 20 years. And he will work and he will give money. He will not see many of the monetary results for himself. Instead, he'll be giving those results to his household, to his wife, to his children, so they can be raised in a peaceful environment, so that the wife can raise them with spiritual values, can educate them so that they can go through education, so that they can be healthy, and so that there's no disturbances in their upbringing, so they have a very secure upbringing in a nice environment. The austerity for a woman is to imbibe the traditional value of being the mother to the children by putting aside her material desires, her aspirations to become equal to a man in her career, or aspire to imbibe those different qualities. Instead, the austerity for a woman is to imbibe feminine qualities in this Kali Yuga. It's not always so easy to do this, but to focus on educating her children, or if she doesn't have children, to still focus on being a spiritual leader of some kind and educating the people around her with spiritual values and devotion. So this is why Anasuya Devī, she's explaining that the austerity for a woman, the greatest austerity for a woman, is actually to serve her husband and to be chaste to him. Another understanding for this austerity word is that in our 4 regulative principles, the pillar that stands for austerity is to not have, there's somebody at the door, is to not have intoxication. So from the point of view of chastity, this means for both a man and a woman, it means that neither the man or the woman should become intoxicated by another person's charms. So for a woman, this means the chastity is to be loyal to her husband. Of course, she can communicate with other men, there's no problem with that, but not to get caught up in any kind of subtle energy that there could be. And the same thing for a man, not to be chaste to his wife, as well, of course, as to be chaste to our spiritual masters and our spiritual sankalpas, the mission why we're actually here. So, in the most ideal sense, when we find our spiritual partner, our spouse, we will vow together to obviously put Krishna in the center. We talk about that a lot. But we will also try always to create a support system so that we can become the best devotee that we could ever be. It's often that when we see that when devotees finally find their partner and they get married, we see that they somehow seem more relaxed. And for some of them, we find that they, especially you can see with the ladies, they really flourish and they're able to do so many things, whereas previously they were finding that difficult, because for most women, it's very nice to be in a situation somehow or other where she feels support and she feels security, and this enables her to flourish, especially if she finds a partner who is highly spiritual and willing to allow, if they're both willing to allow one another to take center stage in different situations. This is a very nice situation, and it inspires others as well to take part in this ashram. Actually now, as our Krishna consciousness movement has grown, it's almost, it's at least 50 years old, over 50 years old. So now we're at a stage where actually our grihastas, they make up the bulk of the movement. They're actually the backbone of our movement, and they provide everything for all the other ashrams. So another thing that I wanted to talk about, which is within these verses, is Rishikesh and the Himalayas and Haridwar, and of course the Kumbh Mela. So has anyone been to the Kumbh Mela or have any idea what it could be? You have been to the Kumbh Mela? Yes, I also had the 1996 and 2013. Amazing. I also was able to go. I went to the one, the first digital Kumbh Mela, as ordained by the wonderful Narendra Modi. So that was back, I think it was back in 2018 perhaps. So the Kumbh Mela is actually an amazing event. It's the largest gathering of people on the earth that takes place over, I can't remember exactly however many years it takes place, because in more recent years, every 12 years, in more recent years they started to create more half kumbhas, because there was a desire and people were traveling there anyway, so then they had literally millions and millions of people all in one spot, so they need to do something. So this is Kumbh Mela, and isn't it incredible and amazing? Not everybody knows what Kumbh Mela is. So Kumbh Mela is not only the hugest gathering of people that happens on the earth, it is also a spiritual gathering of people that happens on the earth. So everybody is there, and they all have, they do not all have the same spiritual path exactly, but they all have a spiritual goal. And that's I find that very incredible. I myself, I was able to go there, and when we were going there on the actual day where everyone heads to, it was interesting, His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, he said in a lecture, and I find this, it stuck with me, he said, there's no other place on the earth where you could go to take a bath and find millions of other people there at the same time and be very happy about this situation. And that's exactly what was happening. So there's a certain day, there are several bathing days, but there's a certain day where everybody wants to go to that particular confluence of the Ganga, because it's understood that there's a very special pastime where a specific drop of water hit there at that time. So they all want to go there at that time. So literally you have millions of people all heading to one junction of the river. And it's a very moving experience. I remember going there. ISKCON has a camp there. If anyone aspires to go one day, I can help you to go there. So we're all going in I suppose you could describe it as caravans of people. Different groups are going with vehicles and with walking, and they're going, and it's continuous, a continuous flow. They actually have to build these pontoons to go across there. Anyhow, they're all going there and they're going to reach this place, and it's a very moving experience. I found it very emotional just to see so many people going to one place with a spiritual desire. Even though I knew that they didn't have the same spiritual desire as me, it was still very moving. Anyway, at this place, you see lots of these yogis who are aspiring to be like Atri Muni, who are doing austerities, like holding one arm up for their lifetime. And you find that this arm, it goes all like withery and strange and thin, and it's because nothing can go to the arm, no blood, no nutrients, so it's all, they have a withery arm. Or someone is standing on one leg, or someone is lying on thorns, or somebody is taking a vow never to sleep. And all these interesting things, which nowadays it's kind of like, for us, it's like, oh, this is, we can't liken it to many things, and I don't want to commit any offense by trying to liken it to anything that we could understand from the Western world. But one of the things that struck me is like, for the whole time I've got my japa mala and I'm chanting, looking at these people, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this man is like, he's lying naked and in thorns, and he's just kind of, I don't know exactly what's happening in him, I can't know, but I just have this Maha Mantra, and I feel very fortunate that this is my path, and that that I have knowledge of it, that somehow or other, for many lifetimes, maybe in previous lifetimes, I also stood in thorns, and somehow I've now qualified to learn the Maha Mantra. And so I feel very fortunate for that. So it seems that many people throughout the history, and even today, they go to the Himalayas to find answers for something. Even now, when the Himalayas has got, there are roads and helicopters and all kinds of tourism going there, it's very hard to find peace and quiet. But people still go to the Himalayas for answers. Even people who know nothing about Sanatan Dharma, they go to the Himalayas for answers. People who are like travelers, I go to India, I'll go, and I have the desire, they just feel inside them, I have the desire to go to the Himalayas and learn something. Maybe I'll do my yoga teacher training there, maybe I'll do Vipassana there, maybe I'll do some kind of, maybe I'll awaken my Kundalini there. So it has a history of being a place where people go even today. And we see that all these great personalities, even Uddhava, even the Pandavas, they all going there to try to find answers, to try to find some spiritual solace. And we see that Atri Muni, he's actually practicing, it says breathing exercises and standing on one leg. So this is pranayama and yoga asanas. So whereas it's popularly taught today that it was the sage Patanjali who kind of created Hatha Yoga, which is the root and the mother of all the yoga asanas which are practiced today. As many teachers will tell you, as well as myself, it wasn't created. It was just it was like many of the scriptures. It was put into recorded information so that people could learn it and it could be distributed today. So it's actually a very old system of practice. Of course, again, it's one which we can use it now. We can use pranayama and yoga asanas in our spiritual practice to help us, but it's not an easy path to self-realization for this age of Kali. All one needs to do is actually try and take a trip to the Himalayas now, and you will find it's very difficult to find a place of peace and solitude, and then it's very difficult to stay in that place with the bodies and with the mind that we have now. But of course, yoga asanas and pranayama can be very helpful for us now, just to quieten our minds so that we can chant the holy name, we can chant our japa with more peace. It's something that we can use to settle the restless mind. So one final thing that I'm going to talk about before I open it up for some questions is this verse of the Bhagavad Gita that Srila Prabhupada he alludes towards here. This kind of devotional service in which knowledge of God's name is lacking is also described in the Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord says there are 4 kinds of men with backgrounds of pious activities coming to him to ask for something that they need. So, does anyone remember what those 4 kinds of devotee are that come?
Distressed.
The one in distress,
One in need.
the one in need or desiring wealth, the inquisitive,
And the one searching after absolute truth.
and of course the one searching for the absolute truth. So I'll read the translation. O best among the Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he is searching for the knowledge of the absolute. So, just like Srila Prabhupada describes that Atri Muni cannot be counted among the pure devotees, it is described in the purport of this verse that these persons who come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service under different conditions are not pure devotees, because they have some aspiration to fulfill in exchange for devotional service. Pure devotional service is without aspiration and without desire for material profit. So, of course, these 4 kinds of person can become purified by association with a pure devotee. And then they will be able to rise to the platform of pure devotional service. Those who are always busy with fruitive activities come to the Lord in material distress, and at that time associate with pure devotees and become in their distress devotees of the Lord. Okay, so I'm going to finish there and open it up for any questions. We have just over 5 minutes left. Does anyone have any comments or corrections, questions about anything we covered in today's verse? Yes, Natabara.
So now we're hearing how Āditya is doing all these, and in the Bhāgavatam it's like a common trope over and over again that the devotee will do tons of austerities before they have children.
Yes.
And I was just wondering, do you know of like any austerities that are recommended or that devotees that you know have done that have produced like nice children, like within the common history, like within ISKCON the last 50 years or anything?
That's a very interesting question. So it's asking, so in the, for anyone that maybe didn't catch that on the stream, Natabaraji is asking, he's commenting that in the history of the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, we see that these different devotees of the Lord, husband and wife, will practice severe austerities before they have children. And the question is in our modern time, since the last 50 years, do I know any examples of devotees who have produced nice children, and what kind of austerities were they able to do? So 2 things come to my mind immediately. One, the first thing is I don't know everyone, I don't know what austerities they did before they conceived their children necessarily. I do know that some devotees like to, they're interested in the Garbhadan Sanskara, and that has had mixed results. Some people have found that, yes, they were able to gain very nice children, and others have found that actually, contrarily, somehow this still didn't qualify for them to be able to do that. So it seems that it's more about, so for anyone that's not familiar, the Garbhadan Sanskara gives instructions about what we need to do before we go to conceive a child, and also even the mood and way and environment and what to wear and all this stuff when we're trying to conceive a child. And I think that it's very wonderful and nice, and it may be suitable for some people. But the main thing is, as always, we're doing Krishna consciousness. It's about our consciousness. It's about our consciousness in knowing that our intention is service to our spiritual master, service to this movement, service to Krishna ultimately, and that we're coming together to create good progeny who will help to steer the world in the right direction. So I've seen that many times people even ask spiritual people and astrologers, like, I want to have, a divine personality of some kind as my children, or I want to have good children. And a similar answer comes, it's like, if you yourself qualify yourself by being the best devotee that you can be, and then obviously this will attract the best spouse that you can have, and then by you two being the best example of husband and wife, then you will, of course, you will attract a divine soul who will want to come to you, because as we know very well, it's a blessing. Like, we can be born into, if we are born into the family of devotees, this means that in our previous life we did many wonderful things. We did many pious things to qualify for that. So again, and then what was the other thing that came to mind when you were saying this about the austerities? So yes, and as I was mentioning previously, in our day and age, in the Kali Yuga, with all of this seemingly chaos going on around us, if we can form that strong bond, at least with the person we're living with, our husband or wife, and then we can create a nice environment, and if we're able to, we can have children in that environment, then we create a whole oasis, a whole different paradigm to things that are going on around us. And that is the austerity. It's of keeping the sanctity in that relationship for the benefit of others, not just for our own self with us and our spouse, but then for the children that we have, but then also for the whole of it. It keeps kind of moving out in waves, this example, because it creates stability for the whole of society. And do I know examples? I'm not sure, because I don't know. I've never actually asked somebody what they did beforehand, but I can see, and I'm sure we all see, that there are many nice examples of people who have been born into the families of devotees. I even heard that one time, I can't remember who exactly said it, but they were doing, many years ago, they were doing like a study or something, where they were looking at the children and the parents and the devotees who are coming now in our Krishna consciousness movement, and they were saying that the children who are born in the movement, they don't think themselves to be devotees of Krishna, but they are actually really very nice devotees of Krishna. And the ones who are not born like myself, we think ourselves, oh yes, I'm a good devotee, but actually we are not good devotees of Krishna. So actually we can see, if you take a moment to look, you'll see many wonderful personalities are around us who are being born into this movement. Not all of them are necessarily like active in the movement, but they are very much wonderful devotees in their own right, and they, whether or not they decide to exhibit their qualities within ISKCON, or they just go out into the world and spread Krishna consciousness in this way, even though I know they're very humble, they'll be thinking, oh, I'm just, being me, or I'm not, whatever they feel that they are or they are not doing. They have very wonderful qualities. So I hope that answers the question in some way. It was kind of a rambling answer, but those are the different things that came to mind when you asked the question. Are there any other things anyone else would like to share? Oh, sorry. Sitaram Prabhu would like to say one little thing.
that we get prayed for the way of Vishnu.
That's right.
Prayed, he had performed austerity by his devotion, and he prayed to the Lord, please send someone from your personal entourage. So we can pray like that also.
That's right.
And I heard of Reverend Jasrupa.
We can use the example of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
The way of Vishnu, they prayed for a child, a divine child, but we didn't know what we got. We didn't know what we got until they grew up, and they were so adverse, to the movement. And I haven't heard of them from now, but we know we have had many experiences like that. Even with my own children, they are not interested in Krishna consciousness so much. And they would say, at least one of your sons are interested, My smallest one will say, well, yes, you're asking me to read, but my eldest son is reading the book, at least one is reading the book. So, we have so much conflict because we are really not qualified to attract their souls from that caliber of souls. But with our sincere endeavor, Krishna will bestow his mercy, and we can go on with our Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, it's the greatest preaching as well, to become a parent. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sitaram Prabhu. Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki.